At the end of April, I was preparing to move from my home in Chicago to Nevada. To ease the process, I hired a company to ship all my boxes to my new house. I decided to take a road trip, staying at hotels or Airbnbs along the way, to relax a bit. The total drive was about 30 hours, so I planned to drive 10 hours each day and stay overnight somewhere. After planning, I realized my first overnight stay would be on the far edge of Nebraska. I searched Airbnb for something affordable since there wasn't much to see in Nebraska, and I just needed a place to sleep for the night. I found a small, one-story home with 2 bedrooms. Although I didn't need the extra bedroom, the price was right, so I booked it. I did find it odd that only 1 bedroom was pictured, but I didn't dwell on it. The next morning, I finished packing my car and started my drive. I left later than planned, which meant driving in the dark for a few hours. If you've ever driven through Nebraska, you know it's pretty desolate, with long stretches of road and few buildings. A couple of hours after dark, I arrived at the Airbnb. It was down a short gravel path off the long, empty road I'd been traveling. The exterior looked more worn than the pictures had shown, but I reminded myself I was only staying for a few hours. I grabbed my bags and headed to the front door. Usually, owners leave a key in a lockbox with a code, but this door had no lockbox and no lock at all, just a plain doorknob like you'd find on a closet door. Feeling uneasy but without other options, I entered the house. To my surprise, the interior was well furnished and maintained. The first bedroom also lacked a lock, but the second bedroom did, so I chose that one. This room had something unsettling, a small, old doorway on the wall opposite the bed, about 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. I took a picture of it because it creeped me out so much. I tried to open it, but it was locked from the other side. I assumed it was a storage space for cleaning supplies or extra towels, but it still gave me the creeps. Exhausted, I unpacked what I needed for the night and got ready for bed. I woke in the middle of the night to a soft tapping noise coming from the edge of the bed. The house was silent except for the tapping. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. As soon as the light hit the edge of the bed, the tapping stopped. I don't scare easily, but that small doorway and the tapping truly frightened me. I jumped out of bed, turned on the lights, grabbed my things, and rushed out of the house. Outside, it was still very dark, but as I backed my car out of the gravel path, I thought I saw a man lying on the ground behind the house. I drove for 30 minutes before pulling over and texting the owner to inform them that there might be someone in the house and to call the police. I continued driving until I found a small town and parked in a grocery store lot to get some sleep. In the morning, I checked my phone and saw that my message had been read just a few minutes after I sent it, but the owner never responded. I still don't know what happened at that Airbnb, but the whole experience was unsettling. My boyfriend and I were visiting my parents in Michigan for a few days and decided not to stay with them for obvious reasons. Instead, we found a cute one-bedroom Airbnb condo about 15 minutes away from their house. The inside was completely redone and very modern, so it wasn't cheap. The host seemed nice and had good ratings, though a few comments raised some red flags. Most of the negative comments mentioned strange experiences with the neighbor. I've had my share of crazy neighbors, so I didn't judge too quickly. I brought it up with the host before booking, and she explained that her neighbor was nosy and sometimes defensive when people tried to get into the Airbnb. She assured me she would inform the neighbor about our stay and provide our descriptions, so everything should be fine. On the day we arrived, everything went smoothly. We met the host, who lived nearby, and she gave us the key to the entry door and the code to the actual apartment. We unpacked and then headed to my parents' house for dinner. I had a few drinks to cope with my mother, and before we knew it, it was 10 p.m., time to head back to the Airbnb. When we pulled up to our rental, we saw a small figure standing between some curtains in the window of the apartment on the top right. It felt eerie. Who just stares out their window like that? As my boyfriend parked, I looked up again, and she was still there, still staring at us. As we walked towards the entry door, I could make out her features. You know how some people just have that crazy look to them? This was her, mangled brown hair, wide open eyes, and an angry frown. She had to be at least 60 or 70. My boyfriend put the key in the door, and as we entered, we saw her standing at the top of the stairs, silently watching us. She was small and round, but her arms and legs were very thin. We looked at each other, then started to make our way up. She didn't say anything, just stared at us with those creepy eyes. We hurried into our apartment, locking the door behind us. What the hell was that? My boyfriend said softly. I shook my head, just glad she didn't try to talk to us. The rest of the night was uneventful until we heard banging on the front door around 4 a.m. My boyfriend was already awake. The banging continued for a minute or two and then stopped. My boyfriend walked towards the door, whispering that he was going to look out the peephole. He looked back at me, clearly confused, and then opened the door a little to look around. I heard him gasp. What? I whispered, stepping towards him. Lying on the welcome mat outside were 3 dead rats, completely gutted, with only one of them still having its head attached. He closed the door, and we agreed to contact the host later that day. I tried to sleep, but the images of those rats kept replaying in my mind. Around 6:30, I gave up on sleep and got up to make coffee. As I did, I heard the neighbor's door slam shut. I looked out the kitchen window, which overlooked the parking lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of the crazy lady. There she was, staring at our parked car. She stood there for the longest time, then slowly turned her head to look directly at me. I jumped back, and she let out a horrible, blood-curdling shriek. My boyfriend ran out of the bedroom, alarmed, and we both looked out the window. The neighbor was now banging her head against our car, screaming things like, "They never leave. When will they leave? Why do they keep coming?" I started recording for insurance purposes, and my boyfriend called the police and the host. By the time the police arrived, she was lying on the ground next to her car, which had surprisingly little damage. The host profusely apologized, refunded our entire trip, and we watched as the lady was taken away in handcuffs, though it took her a while to comply. We never found out what was wrong with her, but I believe something just snapped, and we happened to be there when it happened. This experience taught me to take every review into consideration when booking an Airbnb. Every single one. This happened a few years ago when my friends and I had just finished our sophomore year of college. Finally done with school for a few months, we wanted to celebrate the start of summer break. We all had small jobs near campus and had saved up some money, so we decided to take a trip to Las Vegas for a few days since none of us had ever been there. Initially, we looked for hotels in the city, hoping to find something cheap but big enough for the four of us. When that proved difficult, we turned to Airbnbs, which were generally cheaper and more spacious. We found a few good options and ultimately chose the largest one with the most rooms. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and our Uber picked us up from the airport and dropped us off at the house. It looked even bigger in person, and we were all excited to spend the next few days there. We unpacked and relaxed for a couple of hours, as we were a bit worn out from the flight. A few hours after sunset, my friend Alyssa and I were the only ones still awake. It wasn't too late, probably around 8 or 8:30, but the other two had decided to go to bed early. With nothing to do, Alyssa suggested we take a walk and explore the neighborhood a bit. I agreed, eager to see the unique homes in the area. Our Airbnb was in a nice neighborhood, with well-kept houses lining the street, so we didn't think twice about going for a walk. We headed outside and down the street, passing 6 or 7 houses before the street took a sharp turn and connected to another road. To our surprise, the homes on this new street were completely different, run-down shacks with broken windows, missing mailboxes, and vacant signs on many doors. One house even had a ripped and stained sofa chair in the front yard. We agreed to take the next turn and head back to our Airbnb, but a few minutes later, we saw a small SUV approaching us with its headlights off. As it got closer, it slowed down and eventually stopped right next to us. An older woman, probably 50 to 60 years old, rolled down the window and, with a big smile, said, "You two are such a cute couple." She made weird, jerky motions with her head and arms and was acting strangely. I replied with a quick thank you, hoping to end the conversation and get her to leave. Thankfully, it worked, and she drove off while we continued in the opposite direction. We soon found the turn that led back to our street and our Airbnb. Both of us were shaken and creeped out by the encounter and just wanted to get inside and forget about it. But as we reached the driveway, we saw the old lady's SUV turning down our road and heading towards us again. We were halfway up the driveway when she stopped right in front of the house. This time, she just stared at us with no emotion on her face. Alyssa hurried inside, and I quickly followed. As I was closing the door, I heard the car continue down the road. We stayed up for a while longer, locking all the doors and checking the windows to make sure she didn't come back. After an hour, we agreed we were probably safe and went to our rooms to get ready for bed. The next day, we told our other friends what had happened, and they were pretty creeped out too. We informed the Airbnb owner about the situation and asked if we could cancel our third day to leave early. Thankfully, he agreed. We spent the rest of the day in the city, trying to enjoy at least one day in Vegas. As night approached, We were ready to call an Uber and head back to the house. During the ride back, I received a text from the owner with a picture attached. It was a screenshot from the Ring doorbell footage showing the lady standing outside the house. I immediately showed my friends. We didn't know what to do, so we asked the driver to drop us off at a hotel parking lot a couple of blocks from our house while the owner called the police. After about 45 minutes, the owner called to say the house was clear, but the police never found the lady. This did nothing to ease our nerves. We returned to the house, packed our stuff, and got ready to leave first thing in the morning. Nothing happened overnight, but none of us slept well. We left as soon as we could and headed for the airport. This was one of the strangest experiences I've ever had, and I still think about it a lot. My advice is to always check the area around your Airbnb before you book it. I have no idea what that lady wanted or why she was stalking us, but it freaks me out to think about what could have happened if the owner didn't have a doorbell camera or if we had stayed that third day.